This is the Devil's Guide to D&D. Devil's Delegate here, with another look at One D&D. In the latest One D&D update, besides the new cleric, which I talked about in a previous video, we've got 3 species. And I will note that they have finally switched the word from race to species. I've been wanting this for forever because I felt silly using the word race since about 1979. I'm a little surprised they didn't go with lineage, but species is good. Now, of these 3 species, 2 are redesigns from the first One D&D playtest. Wizards got negative feedback, so they've redesigned the Ardling and redesigned the Dragonborn for either the 4th or 6th time, depending on what books you count. Then they added the Goliath. Not a species I would have added to the base books, not over Aasimars or Changelings or 3 or 4 others. I think because they are working on a Giants book right now, they just got excited about giants and added these in. Well, fine. How good are the 3 species? Well, better. Starting with the Ardling. That's the beasthead species that was introduced in the first One D&D document, where it was sort of an angelic mirror to the tiefling, but also an anthropomorphized animal. And Jeremy Crawford, lead D&D designer, said the feedback indicated they'd gone in too many directions. So now they were playing down the angel side, though not eliminating it, and leaning into the animal side. Gone is the angelic flight, which was really a jump, as is the resistance to radiant damage, and mostly gone is the celestial legacy, where you choose an alignment land and got some associated spells. Now? We'll first note that they've added a heading of Ardling Adventurer traits. We'll see this in all the redesigns, indicating that these traits are just for players, and that NPCs can be significantly different. Replacing the features, we get an animal ancestry: climber, flyer, racer, or swimmer. Choose one. Climber gets you a climb speed and proficiency bonus damage increase to your unarmed strikes. A climb speed can be situationally useful. The damage, which remember is just 2 points at first level, and for most campaigns will end up at 3 or 4, is a constant if minor buff to a monk, but few others. And unlike what I've seen repeated, this is just once per turn. So no, it isn't a huge monk buff due to multiple attacks. Flyer doesn't give flying, it negates falling damage, so a natural version of the Featherfall spell on yourself. Racer gives you... wait. Racer includes Triceratops? Really? Racing Triceratops. Okay. Racer gives you an increase to your dash speed. It's substantial, 20 feet at first level, 30 feet soon after, but it is only for your dash action. Do you take a lot of dash actions? When you really need to cross a field, this is useful. And Swimmer grants a swimming speed. Nice if your campaign has a lot of swimming. And resistance to cold. And all of these are useful in some situations, ones I don't expect to come up often in a majority of campaigns, except for the extra damage from Climber, which is useful for a very limited number of builds. So the feeling of these is okay, but nothing here is consistently useful for a majority of builds. Then we get Divine Magic, not entirely abandoning that celestial connection, that I really wished they'd abandon, and just give us an anthro species. But okay, we get a cantrip from the Divine list. They say Thaumaturgy, but you can swap it, so of course you will, and it's castable with your choice of Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma. I do like extra cantrips, and being able to swap it is a nice bonus. Of course, how good this is depends on how the spells end up. Assuming the spell revisions in this document, where Guidance is once again great and Resistance is now excellent, plus the Divine List has a decent attack cantrip that will be nice on a build lacking distance attacks, this is sweet. Downgrading it a bit is the ease at getting cantrips now. Anyone can take Magic Initiate at first level and get one. The uncertainty that some spells won't get nerfed before the final release, that swapping is nice but you rarely know what you'll need so probably won't swap often, and that clerics and rangers can already do this. But it's a decent feature. And finally, Keen Senses, meaning proficiency in perception. Summing up, I like this better than the previous version, and I think it is an upgrade, power-wise, but I'm still not thrilled. The main feature is too situational, and so too limited, and I'd wish they'd choose a path and go all into the anthro animals, meaning drop the cantrip and come up with another animal-related feature. Also, why not just call them beast folk? I'm assuming the coming of the Ardling is the death knell for Tabaxi, Loxodon, Avens, and other anthropomorphic species, because how many cat people do you want? Next is the Dragonborn, which was the weakest choice in the Old Player's Handbook and had only the mildest of upgrades in One D&D. My biggest complaint was that they'd just done a major redesign in Fizzbands, creating a pretty good species, and we don't need more changes. Just use that one. Crawford addressed my concerns by sidestepping him, saying, yup, they had, and that the Fizzband version will reside alongside this one. I question that design philosophy, but fine, we'll have multiple Dragonborn. So what's this one compared to the previous 1D&D version? Well, it's better. As Crawford noted, lots of people didn't like the breath weapon, so they adjusted it. Again, you're still choosing a dragon ancestor to determine your breath's damage type, and that choice still determines the type of resistance you get, meaning fire is still the best choice. First big change, which was in the Fizban's version, you use the breath weapon as a replacement for a single attack when you take the attack action, instead of it requiring an action. This is a big upgrade, as it was when Fizban's introduced it, making the species much better for classes that have extra attack. And since the DC for the breath weapon is based on con, this is a species meant for melee characters like fighters and barbarians. So that matters. Really, I wish they'd have the DC be generic so it would work well for builds that aren't maxing con. Next big change, you get to choose 15-foot cone or 30-foot line. The last version only had the cone. Previous versions had one or the other, but you were pinned down forever. So now you can switch for each blast. Yeah, that's good. The damage is 1d10 and scales like a cantrip. The last version was 1d10 plus character level, which I liked better. It applied less max damage after 5th level, but a higher minimum, and no one wants to use this and only do 1 damage. You get proficiency bonus uses for day, same as last version, though the older player's handbook had it once per short rest. Overall, a significant upgrade from the last, and will be more fun to play. But honestly, it still isn't a big deal. I'd trade this away in a second for a spell or teleport that other species get. And you still get the damage resistance as mentioned. If you choose fire, this is probably going to be more useful than the breath weapon. And then dark vision, which was in the last version, but not in the old player's handbook. And finally, we trade away the draconic language offered in the last for dragonflight. And damn, that's a good trade. You now get 10 minutes of flight a day, activated with a bonus action. Forget the breath weapon, this is the feature. Your wings are spectral instead of physical ones that you unfurl, which feels a bit silly to me, but I get it, it's to avoid clothing and armor issues. So, flight is great. But don't get too excited or yelling OP, as this doesn't come on till 5th level, at which point multiple casters can cast fly. So yeah, this is good, but not that good. And that makes this Dragonborn pretty good. It's now a legitimate choice for players and even edges out the Fizban version. And last we have Crawford's surprise, the Goliath, not in the previous 1D&D document. In 5e, it's your basic, very basic, melee species. Its main feature is a reaction to decrease some damage. It also had cold resistance, could carry more, and was used to high altitudes, which I imagine has come up once or twice for all players ever playing 5e. The new version is very different. First, it gets a speed of 35, I guess because they're a little bit taller than most. Then the big feature, which is all about choice. Pick a giant type, and get an appropriate feature you can use proficiency bonus times. Cloud gets you a 30-foot teleport. Fire does d10 fire damage on a hit. Note, it's attack roll, not melee attack roll, so works with a bow or spell. Frost is same as fire, but the die is a d6 and the target's slowed by 10 feet. Hill lets you knock a target prone from a hit without an attack roll. Stone is the old Goliath's damage reduction. Storm gives you a reaction revenge damage of a d8. There's a lot of solid choices here, even limited by uses. I prefer these damage options to that of the climbing Ardlings. Storm Giant is the weakest, while the standout, of course, is the teleport. But yeah, nice choices. Then we have a weird one. Large Form, which comes in at 5th level, lets you grow to large size for 10 minutes. Theme-wise, I'd rather have this on a genie kin than on a giant kin, but flavor is free, so fine. You don't get much for being bigger, like no damage increase. Instead, you get advantage on strength checks, which is mainly for grapples, and if you are making a grapple build, you want that advantage more than once a day and before 5th level. And it increases your speed by 10. As an extra feature, after the really good giant ancestry feature, this is fine. Mainly I see this as a supplement to your Rune Knight. Use this before Giant Smite so that you can grow huge and grapple gargantuan monsters. And finally, powerful build, which still has the plus to your carrying capacity, which I'm sure matters in some game out there somewhere, but then adds advantage to saves to end being grappled, which is situationally good. So comparing this Goliath to Eladrin, since both can have a teleport, I'd say the Eladrin's other features are a touch better, but the Goliath doesn't embarrass himself, and in a game only allowing players' handbook races, this is a solid choice for a martial build. My general feelings? All the changes are good, and the results are decent, but none of it excites me, and I hope they give the Ardling another edit. And that's it for now. I'm hungry, so pizza and Guinness. Yeah, pizza and Guinness.